welcome back to Nick Lenz's Doctor Who review, episode 13. Now, this one is quite interesting. Now, I've not discussed this particular Doctor since episode, I believe it was 4, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, not since episode 4. So yes, it has been officially 9 episodes since I discussed this particular Doctor. Because, well, this particular Doctor I've discussed before, but last time discussed by him is when I talked about the Cybermen. This is Logopolis, the final story under Tom Baker for his run. Coming out 11 years after, well, the last story I covered, Spirit from Space. Yep, 11 years later, coming out in 1981. Yep, February 28th to March 21st of 1981. That's when this came out. Now, is there any first for this one? Well, there's a couple of them. One, of course, this is the first appearance of Tegan Jovanova. She, of course, this is the first appearance and when she first joins the crew. This is also the first and only appearance of a character known as the Watcher. No, not Uatu the Watcher from Marvel. This is a character clad all in white, from head to toe all white. Mostly he's there just at the very end of the story. And it's the first time they have Tegan as... Not Tegan. For Nyssa as a regular. Because previously she appeared in the story The Keeper of Traken. And this is the second appearance of the Anthony... what's his... Aldi, I think his name is. Ainley, I think it is. I'm trying to remember his last name here. Sorry about this. It's been like a couple weeks. It's been like 6 days since I covered this. Let's see. Anthony Ainley, yes. This is technically his second appearance in the Doctor Who series. Yeah, last one was in The Keeper Tracking, which was not the... It was actually the previous story. Yep. Though with the next story, Ness joins the crew, officially, and, well, basically the story of this one is this. It's just, well, the Doctor and Adrig, where they basically are mentioning what happened to Romana, and the Doctor's wandering around the TARDIS in the cloister room. By the way, the cloister room, this particular one also showed up in, I believe it was, the last time period prior to this I could think of, was back in, I think it was Invasion of Time, I think it was. Though with that one, they're pretty much going all over the frickin' TARDIS. Oh my gosh, that one. Like a lot of corridors repeating, it was weird. Because the TARDIS is infinite. So they want to basically take new measurements for the chameleon circuit. Okay, so they go to Earth to take measurements of a police box, an actual police box. And of course, they say they go there. Meanwhile, the first time we see Tegan, she is actually, well, trying to head to work. This is our first day as a flight stewardess in Brisbane. Yes. The actress herself, Jan Fielding, is Australian, just like the character. Now, the reason why that this character exists, because Doctor Who was very popular in Australia, so why not have an Australian character on the show? Okay, and have an Australian actress. They tried to do the same thing with the character of Perry, where, because Doctor Who gained some popularity in the US, but they cast a British actress to play the character, even though the character is supposed to be American, obviously. Oh, I should point out though, from this one, up until the end of the next season, Tegan is wearing the same outfit, this flight stewardess attire. By the next season, she stops wearing it, because after the next season, because she got let go from the flight company. Here she is flying into work, and of course she gets, and just by sheer coincidence, her aunt's sports car just happened to get flat tire and stop right in front of this particular police box with this policeman basically there. And then, of course, apparently the policeman does not know if there's a warp. Excuse me. That there's something really strange about the inside of this particular police box. And he gets pulled directly inside. Something out of a horror movie, and he screams. What exactly happens is quite weird. And then, of course, well, the doctor has in his TARDIS. Apparently, Tegan does not notice that. Apparently, she's not looking that particular direction, that particular. They look outside, and they see two women outside. Apparently, the doctor did not know one of those two women would actually be joining him on a journey. Yep. So, then, of course, the doctor basically puts his TARDIS around this other TARDIS to take measurements. He does. And then they notice something really weird about it. They go inside. They keep going deeper and deeper into this particular TARDIS. I'd say about 3 or 4 of them. And then eventually the next one takes them right outside. I thought that was kind of weird. And then, of course, meanwhile, though, Tegan wants to get in contact with the police officer, and then she just wanders inside of the TARDIS. And she wanders into the control room for the first time. Yep. And then, of course, Vanessa, that's the name of Tegan's aunt, where she gets worried about her niece. She goes to check on her, and then she tries to run away and tries to start the car, but the car can't move because of the flat tire. And then something sinister happens. Oh no, what happens? Well, when Dr. comes outside, he discovers police officers outside. Which you're probably thinking, what the heck is going on here? And they look, okay, this is bizarre. Can you tell us about this? And he looks inside, and he sees 2 people. He sees 2, what looks like 2 dolls. But this actually works at the Master, because he has this device known as the tissue compressor, which they actually brought back in the current Doctor Who, where basically, like it says, basically he uses the device to shrink people, and it actually kills them. Yep. So basically, the Master just killed 2 people in the span of about 10 minutes. First, he killed a police officer, then he killed a senior citizen. Well, yeah. And then, of course, the Master himself, you don't see him yet, surprisingly. Oh, and by the way, they wrote the Tegan by episode, I think it was 2, I think it was. Yeah, because because remember, she's not in the first part of the story. No, she isn't. She actually shows up in part 2 of the story. Yes, Espresso 2 story where they're on Logopolis. Logopolis is sort of this, like, computerization of people, where the language is numbers. And a lot of mathematical, and basically Doctor goes to this planet to basically get some calculations to recalibrate the computer circuit. Despite the fact the thing has been busted. Yeah, the thing has been broken for quite a while. It's stuck at the police box. He really wants to fix it. Well, it does get fixed briefly during the 6th Doctor's era. Though eventually it goes back to its default mode of being the police box, which is still at this very day. And it was commented by David Tennant that he actually likes this version of the way the TARDIS looks. Other ones don't like it very much at all. That's the way they're written, and the way that David Tennant writes it, the way he sounds it, because, well, the guy is a big fan. The guy was a longtime fan of Doctor Who, and eventually his dream was to be on the show, and he succeeded at doing that. So, and of course, Doctor Who has this mysterious, like, the Watcher. He pops up. He's only in just this story. So, the Master, first time we see him, is actually on Logopolis. The way it looks, it's almost like, and basically these people do calculations for like old-fashioned calculators, and there's this project that basically they had this computer room. Like, where the heck did they get this technology from? Apparently, they duplicated this particular project on Earth, and they don't explain exactly the reason for this until episode 4 of the story. What's the reason for it? Apparently, according to the Monitor, that's literally what the character is called, the Monitor. No, not the Monitor from DC Comics. This is a completely different character. Where, before I continue about that, how Tegan first meets the Doctor is just quite unusual. She just, after wandering on TARDIS for a bit, she just happens to get back to control where Adric and the Doctor are, and And she's like, who are you? And she introduces herself. And then Adric's the one who introduces himself and the Doctor. Obviously. And of course, then just by sheer coincidence, she just happened to go to Logopolis, her first alien planet. Yeah. And the way it's explained by the Doctor is that in the universe Doctor Who, the Logopolis is, if anything disrupts Logopolis, it basically disrupts the actual, like, fabric and space, like, some part of the cosmic stuff related to the actual universe itself. It's quite weird. So, it's like explained by the Monitor that apparently the universe has reached its limit, and, well, they use this thing to extend it. So he's like, really? That's the reason why? The Doctor knew nothing about this at all. Oh, this little thing about the actual calculations. Before I continue with that, I know I'm skipping around a little bit. So he does the calculation. I'll take a little bit, and he puts them in, and then the TARDIS starts shrinking. Yep, starts shrinking. And then Adric and the Monitor look over what the problem was. Was there an error? Yes, there was an error. And they find the error, and it turns out that several of the people who do calculations were murdered. And the Monitor's like, oh crap, we've been sabotaged. And Adric's like, these people have been murdered. Yeah, obviously. Yep. And, oh boy. I mean, anybody can tell this is all the Master's fault, basically, why stuff is happening in the story, because, of course, it's the Master. Apparently, he didn't realize what he was doing, like, oh, what's the secret? Why you have this stuff here? That's to explain the whole fabric universe reaching its limit. So, then, of course, they go to Earth to do the actual project itself, but they actually have the Watcher take Nyssa and Adric to someplace else, and the Doctor starts cooperating with the Master. Also, the Monitor decides to disintegrate. In a very weird fade-out moment. It's kind of weird how they have it. Well, it's the 1980s. What do you expect for early 80s special effects? It looks kind of weird. It's not a terrible special effect. It just looks weird from modern standards. Though this came out roughly 30 years ago. Actually, like 40 years ago, this story came out. Yeah, can you believe it's been 40 years just this year? Like, let's see. I mean, when the story first aired, that was back in February, so just a few months ago, just 4 months ago, was the 40th anniversary of the story. And who would have thunk it? Yep. So, they go to Earth, and they basically take some time, but they do adjust the actual project itself to basically adjust the entropy. It's kind of weird, hokey science. It's kind of weird how they explain. Apparently, entropy. Well, the Monitor says it's acceptable, but basically too much. Apparently, can unravel the universe. It's kind of weird. The story itself is written by Christopher H. Bemod. Yeah, he worked on a few Doctor Who stories. He worked on this one, the Falling One, and Frontieros. Yeah, and that came in Peter Davidson's last season of the show. It was actually the third season. It was the third story of season 21. Mm-hmm. Yep, and it was also the fourth or last story he appeared in. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they knock at the guy in con to go to the actual satellite itself after running past the guards, and they reconfigure it, and the Master uses it to sort of in the way to take over the universe, and then Doc knocks out this old cable, which stops Master's plan, and of course, while he's trying to get over there, the Master tips the satellite because apparently it was turned way up, and basically the Master turns it so it's facing toward the ground. Not like face down per se, more like facing out front. Instead of facing up, facing down. And the Doctor, of course, is caught on the cable, and then he slips off that, holds onto the satellite itself, and then he falls. Like, literally falls. What appears to be about almost 100, I would say about 50 feet. Like, it was pretty high up. And Normally, if this was a human, he would actually be dead. I mean, he'd be lucky if he's actually moving. He probably broke every bone in his body doing it. And then here comes the Watcher. It's like, oh yeah, I'm reaching my end. But the moment's been prepared for. So the Watcher merges with the Doctor and becomes Peter Davidson. And then the credits roll. And people who watched this originally had to wait almost a whole year. Had to wait 9 months for it to follow up. Yeah, why the heck 9 months? I have no idea. It's kind of weird. It's definitely a good story. You may notice, though, if you're familiar with Tom Baker in this era, you're probably wondering, why the heck is his scarf red? What happened to the multicolor scarf? Well, there is an explanation for that. The John Nathan Turner, who took over as producer for this particular season that this story aired, he apparently replaced that and the Doctor's outfit with this red and purple scarf, and like he also put question marks on. You can't see in the picture here, but you can see a picture right here, like very closely. You probably noticed though there are question marks on his lapel. That was basically John Nathan Turner's idea. Tom Baker didn't like it at all. Excuse me. I have heard the reason why he left for this story. Because he, even though from what I heard, he loved playing the character. He loved making kids so happy. I think the problem was basically he just stayed this particular role for too long. And he wanted just to move on. Move to something else. And from what I heard, people were actually sad to hear him go at this point. Of course, I was alive at this particular point in the time when this story came out. This story came out 7 years before I was born. Obviously. It's a good story. And it's nice how the way the story ended. Now, technically the story is like a three-part involving the Master. That's simply what it is. And, well, the only problem I have with it is the science they explain here involving this stuff. Logopolis of the planet is somehow destroyed. Also, apparently, Tegan's home planet, Trocken, is destroyed. Because of the entropy in the universe. And apparently, because of too much entropy, it somehow wipes out her planet. I don't know how the heck that's possible. How can something like entropy... Like, I don't know what the heck this thing even is. Probably some kind of scientific explanation for it. But, wow. Apparently, there's an acceptable amount according to the monitor. But too much can have a disastrous effect. Okay. That's the only problem with it was the whole science part of it. I thought it was kind of weird. And the fact, the way that everybody was acting like, oh, let's have this side room where pretty much we have inside, oh yeah, let's go to the street and check out what the heck is going on. So apparently, aside from this one room of computers, they don't have an actual computer because apparently, according to the monitor, he says, oh yeah, the computations I do are too difficult for computer. Okay. I can kind of buy that, yes. But aside from that, it's a good story, definitely. Nothing wrong with it. It's a good setup for Tom Baker. But the only weakness is the science stuff related to it. And the minor special effect related to the monitor's death. Yeah, but I give this one roughly a 9 out of 10. It's definitely a good story. Not exactly like a 10 out of 10. When it comes to finales for Doctor Who, I would probably say this is probably, in my opinion, it's very strong per se, but I've heard the best finale for any Doctor before they regenerate into the next generation is Caves of Arizati for Peter Davidson. If I heard that was the best one, how would I rank the ones basically have been so far? Well, I can't exactly rank because I haven't covered all of them yet. This is actually the first generation story I've actually covered on my show for this one. Yeah, it's the first one. Even though this is the end of Tom Baker's era for Doctor Who with this story, it's not the last time reviewing any Tom Baker stories. Oh, don't worry, I do plenty more. But the next one hopefully will be a review of the very first story of Peter Davison. It will also be my second Peter Davison story I've ever actually covered on the show. Yep. Yeah, surprisingly, I've covered like prior to that one, it's actually released at one time with Spencer McCoy. But if you look at the show so far, most of the stories I've covered have all been Patrick Troughton stories because I love Troughton stories. They're so interesting, exciting to watch. Yep. But yeah, so that's it for Stickler Review. Yeah, this was a bit unexpected to do. I wasn't initially planning this, but I had the DVD, so I just watched it and, of course, do a review for it, okay? Video's next video, which probably tomorrow. Now, in the case of tomorrow videos, the only thing I might do tomorrow is probably a comic corner or two. But that's going to be pretty much it for it, okay? So next video. Bye.